Hi, this is a tutorial for TOG 24/7 and we are going to be learning the basics of Photoshop. I'm going to start with the layers palette and what layers are and how they help us when we're editing photos. So we have here an image that I've opened of an overhead projector, and as I've opened the image you can see that in the layers palette, situated by default down in the bottom right of the screen, as you can see we have one layer here. The layer is named background. We have a thumbnail preview of our layer and we have a locked symbol. Now the reason why I've got a picture of an overhead projector is to help us understand what's actually happening in the layers palette. The background layer is like the image was actually drawn onto the glass of the overhead projector. This means it's locked and there's very little we can do with it, and if we were to have other sheets on top, we cannot put the sheets on top underneath the glass. The glass is the very bottom layer. So this is the background layer and it's locked. If I was trying to got the move tool and try to move the layer, I will get an error message saying I cannot move it because the layer is locked. If we were to create a new layer, would be like creating or placing a sheet of acetate on top of the overhead projector. And we do this by clicking the new layer icon, which is situated in the very bottom right. There's two. There's the trash can and the one next to the trash can, which is like a new page icon or new layer icon, and it actually pops up saying create a new layer. So I shall click that and we have an empty layer above our background layer, and by default Photoshop will name this layer layer 1, and this layer is completely blank, and we can see here these transparent pattern which shows that the layer is completely empty. I'm just going to add some content to this layer, and this is like drawing on the acetate, the first acetate sheet that you would place on the overhead projector. I'm just going to draw a circle there, and this shows that in the thumbnail icon down here that I still have a lot of transparency, but the actual layer consists purely of the black circle I've just drawn. So I'm going to move on to another document here, and this document I have the same background layer, but I've also created 3 new layers above the background layer called layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. With the icon to the left of the thumbnail we have a little eye icon which shows whether the layer is visible or invisible. And if I click the layer 1 eyeball to make it visible, you can see that the contents of layer 1 now appear in our document. If I select layer 1 by clicking on this empty area of the layer in the layers palette next to layer 1 and I select the move tool, I can now move the layer independently of the background layer, and this is like a sheet on an overhead projector screen. So I'm going to position that into place. Now I'm going to come to layer 2 and I'm going to turn on the eyeball for layer 2. I'm going to make sure the layer is selected by clicking an empty area, and I can now, using the move tool, position layer 2 independently of the background and independently of layer 1. And I can position that where I wish, and you'll notice that it's hiding anything in the background and it's also hiding anything in layer 1 because it is on top of layer 1 in the stacking order, the same as it were if it were an overhead projector. I'm now going to go to layer 3 and turn it on and click on the layer 3 to select it, and with the move tool again I can now position layer 3, which is at the very top of the pack, which means wherever it is it will hide what's below it in the image. So this is giving you an understanding of how the layer palette works and the stacking order in which we start with a background layer, we then add layers on top which hide information underneath them. If I wanted to change the stacking order by moving a layer down or bringing a layer higher up in the stacking order, to do that I can just grab the layer by positioning my mouse in the empty area over here, and I can drag the layer down, and as you'll see the bold line appears as I come down, and I now have layer 3 below layer 2. And I'll show you the effect of that by moving the contents of layer 3. If I was to move that down, you can now see that layer 2 is actually on top of layer 3, and that echoes what the layer palette is telling us here. Quite often when we're working in Photoshop, we can end up with a lot of layers, and it's quite a good idea to name the layers so we can keep organized. So I'm just going to show you how to name the layers. All you need to do is double click the layer name where it says layer 1, and a little window opens for you to type the name of the layer, and just by clicking away it says now change the layer. So I'm now going to change the layer, this name, by double clicking, and again with this layer, so we can label all of our layers correctly. The other thing we may wish to do is to be able to delete a layer, and we do that by dragging it to the trash can. And I'm going to delete this blue layer here. I'm going to click and drag down so I get to the trash can in the bottom right corner, and then let go, and the layer has disappeared from the layers palette. I can always undo that option by going to Edit, Undo, Delete Layer, and you can see the layer reappears. So I hope that gives you a basic understanding of how the layer palette and the layers work.